John Robinson, touchdown Atlanta. Intercepted A.J. Terrell. Touchdown Atlanta. Drake London. Here's a pressure. Jones goes down. Oh my goodness. Welcome to the game, Cadero. Oh, Darnell Mooney inside the 10. Oh, and it's intercepted. Kane Ellis the pick. Striding out, Jesse. Touchdown Atlanta. No chance. Oh my gosh. Oh my heavens.
This rivalry is big. I take a lot of pride in it. You know, those games are always, very competitive, very chippy. Now we're going there, but I love playing in that stadium. Like, that stadium's awesome.
What a grab by Mooney. Straight drop, look, side, Devakate. Intercepted, Jesse Bates. Striding out, Jesse. Touchdown, Atlanta. Hit the cutback, 30, 25, Robinson 20, 10, 5. Touchdown, Atlanta. What a run.
Just got to make sure this week, we're very locked in the little things, little details. I think if we do that and do it the right way, then, we'll start to see some change in a very positive way here.
Well, it is rivalry week, and this week the Falcons are heading down to New Orleans to take on the Saints in week 12 of the NFL season. Thank you guys for joining us for the Falcons pregame show presented by Ticketmaster. Taylor Vismor, Derek Rackley. Saints coming off of a bye. Falcons looking for their first win since week 6. I mean, there's a lot going on in the NFC South right now, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot, and you could say all you want about coming off a bye and losses for Atlanta and everything. It's like, I hate to use the old phrase, right? Throw the records out the door, but that's kind of what this matchup gets both teams a little bit more hyped, a little bit more excited, a little bit more focused, because you always want to play your best when it's Falcons versus Saints. And this is a game where, Taylor, the team that goes in and makes plays, like, you got to go win this game. This is hard to kind of stumble into a victory. Think about last year. They went down there, the Falcons, on paper, the better team.
Yeah.
Should have won that game. New Orleans had just fired their head coach. They didn't make enough plays, and they came away with a loss. That's what happens in these rivalry matchups.
Yeah, we're going to get to the rivalry matchup here in just a few moments, but as we get closer to that matchup that's going to happen on Sunday at 4 o'clock, we actually want to start with the biggest news of the week in the NFC South, and really some of the biggest news in the NFL so far this season, in the fact of Michael Penix being placed on IR due to a knee injury. After a second opinion, it was determined that he would need season-ending surgery on his left knee, which will bench him for the remainder of the year. Now, that Penix is benched for the rest of the year and placed on IR. Kirk Cousins will get the start today, or on Sunday, excuse me, and then Easton Stick was elevated from the practice squad onto the regular 53-man roster, and Kyle Trask, the Florida Gator, he was placed on the practice squad, signed in the practice squad earlier this week. Let's kind of sit with Michael Penix before we get to Kirk Cousins and what he can bring to this team moving into the second half of the season. Big news for the Falcons, and not great news either. What do you take away from Michael Penix not being able to play for the remainder of the year?
Extremely unfortunate, because I think most people would agree that you see the talent, like you see the next level talent and the things that he can bring to the table and the type of a difference maker that he can be. On the flip side, you know that he's also had some of his struggles, right? The numbers haven't been necessarily impressive, and I think a lot of people are wondering, why has there not been more touchdowns thrown through the air, so on and so forth. Things have gotten a little bit better as of late, but you never want to see a guy, your now franchise quarterback, that goes down and misses an extended amount of time. You can look around the National Football League, it happens all the time. Look, Joe Burrow earlier on the season, so on and so forth, right? But this is just the nature of the game. People get hurt, whether it's at the linebacker position, the offensive line, and dare I say the quarterback, right? It just ends up, because it's the most high-profile position on the field. Generally, that guy is making the most money on the entire football team. And so there's no time to sit here and sulk about Michael Penix Jr. being on injured reserve. The whole mantra of the National Football League is next man up, turn the page, what do we got to do to win, right? So Atlanta might be fortunate that they have not only one of the most accomplished starting quarterbacks, I say starting quarterbacks now, backup quarterbacks on their roster, but a guy that's been here. It's not like they had to go pluck somebody from somebody else's team and then get him up to speed really quickly, having to crash course him in to the offense. Kirk Cousins knows the offense. He's actually had a lot of success with this offense last year. So now you feel bad for Michael. You wish him the best in his recovery, but we still have a season to play in 2025, and Kirk's going to have to be the guy.
Yeah, kind of staying on Penix really quickly, I think something that was really interesting on Sunday is obviously when he went down, he threw his helmet back, and you could see, if you were watching the game or if you were in Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the game, you could see the frustration that he was under, and it almost felt like he already knew. Yeah. And it reminded me of the draft process for Penix, because for so much of that process, everyone was saying, well, maybe you shouldn't take him because he gets hurt all the time. And then he wrote this letter in the Player Tribune saying, you should take me because I get hurt a lot, because it shows my mental fortitude to work back up to being at a playing level. And yes, did he get hurt this season? And yes, is he out for the season? Of course. But I've been seeing him around the facilities since it happened. You know, these guys are on IR. They don't have to be in the building. They're not technically on the 53-man roster. They can go home and do treatment there. So far this week, and yes, it's only been a week, he's still in the locker room. He's still in the building. And to me, that speaks volumes about his character of where he sits on this team right now.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that, because as I was at the game this past Sunday and he was down, the first thing that came to my mind was he's had a history of injuries to that part of his body, and it was almost like he knew. And the reason why I say that is because I never had knee injury, so I may not have known had that been me. And I don't know this for sure. I have not talked to Michael Penix, but you just saw that like frustration from him right away, because you're right, Taylor, it was almost like I've been here before. Yeah. Like I've felt that before. So you hope the best. But I love the comment that you made that he's still around the building, because that's the sign of a true leader. Somebody that wants to be here. And guess what? Like, this guy is used to being around his brothers, his teammates. And it's like, if you take that away from him, maybe this process gets a lot more difficult. Like, it might be more manageable. It might be easier for him. It might be easier for him to fight through some of the struggles if he's constantly seeing his teammates, if he's seeing the training staff, if he's seeing the coaches each and every day that are encouraging him along the way. And we hope that he gets back as soon as he can. Exactly.
We hope that Michael Penix, in the surgery and the rehab that he will go under throughout the rest of the season and throughout the offseason, is quick, speedy, and as perfect as it can possibly go. But like you said earlier, there are games left to be played. I mean, we're in the middle of the season right now, and the Falcons haven't won a game since week 6. Kirk Cousins now will be the starting quarterback. And like you said, it's not like it's like some Joe Schmo. It's Kirk Cousins, right? I remember when we first got him here in the building, there was so much conversation about how great Kirk Cousins would be for this organization. And then obviously he was benched in the second half of the 2024 season. But coming into this week, a lot of media had a lot of questions about what the comfortability would be like for this coaching staff having Kirk Cousins start under center.
Allison, I just think, he started the season for us last year, didn't start off as well, right? Remember, we played Pittsburgh, kind of struggled a little bit. We were able to go out there and be competitive. Once he got rolling, we were able to get some really good games off to one of the career best games that we had in Atlanta history. So, we just got to find a way to get him back to those moments and those things, and he's got to find his way to be able to do those things as well, which I feel really good about. Just watching him in practice and watching him in training camp and watching him go through his process over the last couple of months, I feel like he'll be able to go out there and execute and do some things for us really well. He doesn't provide us confidence in that way that he'll be able to do those things for us.
Does it help in a time like this having a veteran quarterback like Kirk Cousins as your backup and coming in and starting? There's
100% no doubt about that. It was the whole purpose of, I know it was a whole rush to, move on and do all these other different things, but you talk about a great human, you're talking about a guy can play, a guy that you got a lot of belief in, a guy that led us to a 6-3 record last year, and will be asked to he'll be called upon again.
All right, Rack, I actually want to start with what that second half of that question that Allison asked Raheem Morris, about Kirk Cousins, saying, does it give you more reprieve that he has started in this league before and that you guys did not get rid of him? And I think what Raheem Morris said, what was so great, was everyone wanted to know and wanted us to get rid of him so quickly. And we were kind of saying all offseason, it's actually going to be great to have someone that is a bona fide starter be the second man in the system right now. And look, I mean, we're here, we're going into the Saints week, and we need Kirk Cousins to step up and be the starter that we knew him to be when we first signed him in 2024.
Yes, not necessarily, I would say, how things were originally planned, right? They went out and they got Kirk Cousins in free agency, and the thought was he's going to come in here and he's going to play extremely well, and Michael Penix is going to get an opportunity to learn from him for maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 3 years. Who knows what's going to happen? But I would like to think that if Kirk Cousins came in here and he absolutely balled, they won a bunch of games, they went to the postseason, he didn't have the struggles with the turnovers, we might even be having this conversation about Michael Penix. Now you could flip that and you could say, yeah, afterwards, Kirk was frustrated because he came here because he wanted to be a starter. Yes, the whole situation with draft day, whether or not he was surprised, I get all that. Whether or not he was banged up last year, I get all that. However, you got an opportunity now, and he gets his opportunity to not only prove to himself, to prove to this organization, prove to the National Football League that he still has something left in the tank.
Yeah.
And he's got playmakers around him. Yes, Drake London's not going to be there. We're going to talk about him a little bit later. But he's got playmakers, and Kirk doesn't have to do all of this, but he does have to make some great decisions. He does have to distribute the football. And Taylor, he will have to make a couple of throws this weekend that are just a little bit different. You're going to have to make a couple of really tight throws, a couple of really questionable but good decisions because you made the right throw in order to have success, because that's the National Football League. You're going to have a team going against you in some pass rushers that don't like the Atlanta Falcons. You're going to have one of the tackling machines on the other side of the ball. And so there's going to be some really talented players that are going to try to make things difficult on him. And he's going to have to go back to like the old Kirk Cousins days, right? The old Minnesota Vikings days, and go out there and make some plays.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what he can do. And obviously, you mentioned Drake London. Let's talk about him now, though. He's week to week right now on the injury report, will be week to week, and will miss this game on Sunday. But look, when you look at this graphic right here, I mean, it's obvious that Drake London is wide receiver one by far and away. He is the 5th in the NFL in passing or in receiving yards this season with 810 yards in just 11 weeks in 10 games with that week 5 bye. How much is a miss of not having Drake London on the field on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, he's what I would call the alpha dog out there, right? And Coach Raheem Morris talked about him, and he is the guy that gets everybody else going. I truly appreciate his passion. I appreciate the way that he plays the position with so much tenacity. And the fact that Drake believes that every football is his, right? Like the ball is in his direction. It's not for the defense. It's my ball, and I'm going to do everything I have to get that football. And he's got that different athletic makeup to where he can do that. There's not a lot of wide receivers in the NFL that are sitting at 6'5", former basketball players that can go up and they can elevate over the top of the defense. They can use their size, their physicality to their advantage, but then they can also do some of the small receiver stuff. I use that in air quotes, right? The quick slants, the balls right across the middle, pulling away from the defense. Like, he can do a little bit of everything, and that's the reason why, even though this team is struggling a little bit, he's 5th in the NFL in receiving yards because he makes things happen. So yes, it's a huge loss. It's just like it's a huge loss for anybody when they lose their starting quarterback. You lose your top receiver, you lose your top running back, you lose your top pass rusher. Things change. It's different. But yes, you got to have other people step up. And so Atlanta, that's the job this week, is Atlanta pass catchers. And when I say pass catchers, not talking about all wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, everybody's got to step up and bring production. You don't have to be Drake London, but you got to produce.
Well, I think Drake being 5th in the NFL right now in receiving yards, I mean, that's an enormous hole to fill, and it's not going to be a one-to-one kind of fill for this team. And I think that's what you saw during training camp, of the guys that Raheem Morris and this offensive staff brought in to try to find somebody that wouldn't fill one-for-one for Drake London, but could fill in for when he was going to miss, because we all know that Drake loves to go out and he looks for the contested catches. He looks for those 50-50 balls, and that does sideline him a couple of times, either because of some injury stuff or his helmet might break or whatever, and he has to come out. Who are some guys that we can put in for Drake London when he does have to come out? Raheem Morris was asked this week about who would fill in for Drake in the coming weeks, since he is week to week right now.
I got a lot of confidence in, David Seals going out there and being a step up for us and do some really good things. We got to get Mooney to bounce back and do a lot of things for us that we want him to do. Obviously, Kyle Pitts plays a factor into that receiver room. Bijan plays a factor into that receiver room, and some of the things he's able to do. And we got a bunch of people that need some opportunities, and they'll get them. We'll find out about a lot of our guys this week. We'll get a chance to look at those guys and work. It's not that you don't want the production from those guys. I think you can get the production from those guys. I think we're all going to make decisions based off performance base. There's always going to be those ways, but you're definitely going to miss Drake. Obviously, he's been super productive. He's been outstanding for us all year. He's an emotional leader for us. He's our barnyard bully. He's a tough guy, and he certainly will be missed.
All right, so David Sills, Casey Washington, some guys that Raheem Morris did mention. But one guy that I do want to specifically talk about is Darnell Mooney, because it seems like this season he hasn't been a name that a lot of people have been talking about when it comes to the Falcons and their pass catchers. But when you look at last season, he had great chemistry with Kirk Cousins. Is this an opportunity for Darnell Mooney to kind of have a great game now that Kirk Cousins is the starting quarterback?
Without a doubt. I mean, this is I think a time where everybody, whether it's the guys on this team, whether it's the coaching staff, the personnel department, it's people around the National Football League are saying, okay, maybe this, or not maybe, this has to be the game where Darnell Mooney has the emergence. You're right, Taylor. I mean, he had almost 1,000-yard season last year, much of that with Kirk Cousins. And I think everybody wants to see a few more of these highlights like we're getting a chance to see here. Mooney creating separation, going up and making contested catches, and getting the ball ultimately in the end zone. He's got the ability to do it. Yes, he was a little bit banged up early in the season, but at this point now, like, that's not really a discussion anymore.
Right.
Like, you're out there, you're playing, you're active. Like, we got to go have you make plays. And that's running the right routes, creating separation at the line of scrimmage. And when the ball is there, you got to go make some difficult catches. It's not always going to be wide open. So this is an opportunity for him. This is an opportunity for Casey Washington, David Sills. Maybe, Taylor, there will be somebody else this week during practice that gets elevated. We just don't know, because I think there's still a little bit of uncertainty from the coaching staff is, what is that depth chart going to look like on Sunday?
Yeah.
And who do we feel the most confident with based off how they practice?
Yeah.
And a lot of coaches will tell you the guys that earned it during the week are going to get the opportunities on the weekend. But once you get those opportunities, who knows? Maybe it's going to be a Casey Washington of 6 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown. It doesn't have to be a Drake London dominant style performance, but you're going to have to get it from somebody, because otherwise everybody's going to key on Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to do. Somebody else is going to have to provide production to loosen things up off of him.
Yeah, I think in this conversation, I'm just kind of reminded of some Saints games that we've had in the past since we've been doing this show. And I can't remember if it was the last season or the season before that, when the Saints wide receiver core and really their pass catchers were really banged up. And we were like, just go out and have fun. Like, go play.
It was
like
last year.
Was it last year?
Yeah, it was last year.
And then we were
lost.
like, it's going to be great. Like, they don't have many people. And then they just, it was these guys that needed to put tape on, like film on tape, and they needed to make themselves a name. They went out there. They're like, I might not be a wide receiver 1 on this team right now, but I can be a wide receiver 1 somewhere else, and I'm going to put film on this tape, and I'm going to go out and make some touchdowns. And they did great a couple years, or last year.
Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed were both out the game.
Yeah.
And Valdez Scantling stepped up, and he had 2 touchdowns in the game. Because that was the discussion we were having. Like, they're without their 2 best wide receivers. Like, where's the offense going to come from? It's sometimes you just never know, right? And so maybe it ends up being Casey Wall. Maybe it's David Sills. Maybe David Sills has his coming out party this weekend, but it's going to have to be somebody. You just never know. Maybe the Saints are thinking the same thing. Oh, there's no Michael Penix. There's no Drake London. Like, we good. Well, that's the wrong mindset to have, number one, but prove them wrong, right? Go out there and produce and prove them wrong.
All right, well, there is a game happening on Sunday at 4:30. It is the Saints and the Falcons, one of the oldest and the best rivalries in the NFL right now. It is tied all-time 56-56 between the two, of the 113th meeting between these two. This is one of the greater rivalries in the NFL. No matter how great or how not so great these teams are, this always feels like such a leveled playing field when it comes to the Saints and the Falcons. Thinking about the team that we have now, looking at this offense, Chris Lindstrom, Caleb McGarry, Jake Matthews, these guys have never played anyone else on rivalry week except for the Saints. Like, how cool is that? And then on the defense, you have Caden Ellis, David Onyemata. They played on both sides.
Yes.
This is one of the coolest rivalries. You've been a part of this rivalry as a player, and then also doing media for this rivalry. What's so special about this one?
It's one of those situations where the National Football League, you don't get a whole lot of matchups where it's like there's that true distaste and hate between the teams. You see it a lot in college football, right? So many teams in college football have that one opponent that they absolutely cannot stand. And maybe it does happen throughout other organizations and teams in the National Football League, but maybe it's just not publicized as much because of the amount of parity in the National Football League. And it's, I don't know, maybe it's just not the same nostalgia in the NFL versus the college game. But this is one because I've been a part of it many a times. We've covered it here as media, and it's hate week. They come into it and the teams don't like each other. It's chippy on the weekends or during the game in between the lines. And the team that is able to play with the passion, play with the energy, play with a little bit of attitude, but not let it hurt them. Right? Because as soon as you start getting 15-yard penalties because that passion, that hate for the other team starts negatively affecting you, then it's a problem. Right? But your ability to stay within yourself, play within the game. One guy that I know we don't have to worry about was Bijan Robinson. I don't think I ever seen him talk trash to anybody in his entire career.
I mean, he said their stadium was one of the best stadiums in the league.
It's like, who says that?
Who says that? I don't think anyone's saying that about that stadium, by the way.
But it's pretty cool because you can't really second guess anything that he says because he makes people look foolish as we look at another highlight of Robinson.
Right.
But yes, it is it's a cool matchup because of the true distaste that both teams have for each other and just a little bit of elevated sense of urgency in this game over all the others.
Last year when they were going to New Orleans, when the Valdez scandal happened to the Falcons, I said in the pregame show, what's more dangerous? A team that is on a roll, that has found their stride and is winning, which is what the Falcons were walking into, or a team that desperately needs a win, which was the Saints. Now I'm going to ask you a similar question. What's more dangerous? A team coming off of a NFC South win and then a bye to rest themselves up, or a team in the Falcons that seem to desperately need a win right now?
Yeah, to me, the answer is easy. It's Atlanta. But I think it's almost like we've been saying they desperately need a win over the last few weeks, right? But it's the same scenario in this one. Coming in a little bit banged up, having to go on the road, having to live with life with a new starting quarterback, albeit one that we know a lot about. So yes, this is one of those games where you could say that Atlanta is the team that's very dangerous. But it's just the consistency or lack thereof is the reason why it's hard to just go in and say, yeah, they've got a great chance of shocking the world, because it's not like every single game, even though the last 3 weeks have been competitive, like they've had opportunities towards the end of the last 3 games to come away with a win, they just haven't been able to finish. So can this be the game that Atlanta does have the opportunity to win, and then they find a way to finish? That's going to be one of the huge keys. Not my key to the game later. We'll get there.
We'll get
there.
But don't get ahead of
finish
yourself.
Is going to be huge in this game.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. I know that we talked about the pass catchers and obviously without Drake London and who's going to step up there. But what's been interesting in watching Kirk Cousins come in for Penix a couple of times so far this year is they heavily rely on the run game when Kirk Cousins comes in. Not saying that Kirk can't throw the ball or anything, but just part of the game plan. Just go out there and run the ball. Looking at these two guys in this running back room, Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson, I feel like we've talked about these two ad nauseum, but it seems like so far in this season that in the first half of the games that have been played, this rushing attack could not be stopped. And now in the second half of the games played, it seems like people kind of figured out the Falcons' MO when it comes to rushing. How can this rushing attack in Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier show up on Sunday and get a run game going? Yeah, this is again one of those games where the offensive line, I think, is going to be challenged, right? Because this is what's going to have to work, is running the football. And I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but like this offensive line's got to be great in pass protection as well, because you know that Kirk Cousins needs to throw the football out of the pocket. But if this were me, if I was the offensive coordinator, and I have not called any plays at a competitive level higher than middle school girls flag football, which, by the way, we've won 3 straight titles. Come on.
But this would be a game where I would have both of these running backs on the field a lot in this game. Why is that? Because you don't have Michael Penix, you don't have Drake London, and who's one of your best receivers outside of Drake London? It's Bijan Robinson. Right. But then you start putting New Orleans into a matchup situation, right? We see so much nickel in the National Football League now. And so if you put both of those guys on the field at the same time, and New Orleans decides to play nickel because we're worried about what Robinson can do coming out of the backfield, then what do? You run the football at him. You have to run the football at him and go right at the nickel player, the smaller player, if you will, and you have to have success running the football. And then once they start biting down a little bit because they got to slow it down, that's when you try to find the matchup with Robinson coming out of the backfield, getting in the slot, and maybe he gets over the top of somebody that he's going to beat, and then you make one man miss, and all of a sudden explosive play waiting to happen. But if this were me this week, I'm looking at having both of those guys on the field a lot together on offense and having them work off of each other. Yeah, well, our DJ Rackley went back into the film room to talk about how this rushing attack and Bijan Robinson specifically can take advantage of this Saints defense.
Hey guys, as we know, Bijan Robinson is a special player. He's continued to do that since he walked into the National Football League with our Falcons. There are a couple plays I want to show you that makes him really good. And there are a lot of adjectives that describe him, but I think I got one play that really capitalizes who he really is. So you're talking about running this little inside zone. You're talking about the vision, the speed, the burst. This is going to be a really good run by Bijan, but he's created because he has the great vision. Now it looks like, oh yeah, okay, here it is. Now I have a two-way go. Looks like, hey, if I want to bounce this here, I got a guard pulling around, I can take it there. Or you look on the other side, I got a two-way go over here. Look at this hole. This is a huge hole. I'll take that. That could be 2-3 yard gain. Easy enough, right? Bijan has that ability. But his ability to jump cut to the right, jump cut to the left on here and make a cut, and then boom. Okay, so now it looks like, oh, that hole closed up really fast. You're looking up here, and they got, oh my goodness. You're talking about, look at the yards of space between them. It's only 2 yards of space between those three guys, and they have him dead to rights in the hole. Look at it. It's 3 guys right here. No way he gets out of this, right? No. The speed and burst to the edge makes him special, and now he turns a 1 yard gain into 19. Physical, the burst, the ability maybe to get to the corner, but the vision to see it all in real time is really special. Now, this week, obviously playing against the New Orleans Saints, similar stuff. Falcons love the outside stretch zone, right? Love to run that. It's a big-time play for them. They did it well over this past season. Here's a similar play here. Stretch zone, look at this. Now you got the edge, similar to how we run it. They got a guy coming from the inside out, but we have the speed of a guy like Kyrie Wentz, similar to Bijan, but then also the ability to break tackles. Get to the corner, boom, one guy missed. How many times have we seen Bijan make that one guy miss in the hole and pick up 5, 6, 7 or more yards? Here it is, make that guy miss, boom, run through another arm tackle, bounce that out again, and a more physical run. 3-4 yards on that physical run there from Kyrie Wentz. Bijan is a lot better than that guy. We know it. But guess what? This is a defense that is very susceptible to giving up big runs, and they've done it this season, and they arm tackle, and we know with Bijan Robinson, arm tackles means more yards.
All right, excellent job, Shock, as always, on the breakdown. And what I love about that is you talking about the next level speed that Robinson has, because that first play that you showed, you're right, in the National Football League, generally, that's 1 or 2 yards at best when you decide to bounce that football all the way back. In fact, when I'm calling games as an analyst in the National Football League, like I've always been coached, even going back to my playing days when Alex Gibbs was our run game coordinator and we had TJ Duckett and Warwick Dunn, we're getting upfield. Like you make one cut, you go, you get upfield, because his idea was if you bounce in the National Football League, you try to get out to the perimeter, there's way too much speed in the NFL. Yeah. You're going to get ran down, right? So that 1 or 2 yard gain that Shock was talking about generally is 1 or 2 yards. Yeah. But this guy is just different, and we talk about it all season long. And so, yes, he kind of trumps a lot of things that most coaches would probably say is make one cut, get upfield, get north and south. Mm-hmm. If you can get me 4, right? But it's like he's already made enough plays. His resume has spoken for itself, right, where you kind of just got to let him do what he does, because he's got a little bit of Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith in him, okay?
Right. I mean, like, honestly, when you say that, it kind of makes me think about when he was drafted, right? Tyler Algier, rookie year, had 1,000 rushing yards. And then they go and get Bijan Robinson, 8th overall, and people were kind of scratching their heads thinking,
like, they don't need a running back.
Right. Like, what are we doing? Why do you need 2 running backs? And then you see what he can do on film and what he's put on paper. It's like, oh, well, yeah, obviously.
I get it now.
Yeah, exactly. But you brought up nickel earlier about how this offense can kind of manipulate the Saints defense and using nickel and using Bijan as maybe a pass catcher or maybe not. Let's actually just run the ball because they have nickel out here. Who are some of the Saints defenders that people need to star and kind of look at on Sunday?
Well, obviously, I talked about the tackling machine is Demario Davis. He's
right,
their leading tackler. He's got 91 tackles this year. Atlanta Falcons fans or people that have watched this matchup have seen him quite often. He is their alpha dog on the defensive side of the ball, right? He's the guy that's going to get everybody lined up. He's going to play with a little passion. And guess what? He's going to talk a little mess in this game, too. And maybe not a little, he's going to talk a lot of mess. But he has taken care of his business. Now, he doesn't have any sacks. He's got 5 tackles for loss this year, but he is a tackling machine. Pete Werner, the other linebacker, 2nd in tackles. So you talked about Caden Ellis. He was at this organization. Pete Werner is kind of like the guy that maybe Caden Ellis was going to turn into, but he has done that for the Atlanta Falcons. But these 2 guys are really good tacklers there. Now, you think about the pass rush. That's where things get a little bit different. You're seeing Chase Young, who last year in that second game in New Orleans, remember, had that sack that really backed Atlanta up and put them in an awkward position when they were trying to get back in the game. But they've also got Carl Granderson. He leads the team in sacks at 4.5. And oh, by the way, Cam Jordan is the guy that Atlanta Falcons organization, rivalry, everybody knows him well. Here's an interesting stat about Cam Jordan. He's played 28 career games against the Atlanta Falcons. He's got 24 sacks in 28 career games. Now, yes, it's in division, but it's by far more than he's had against Carolina and then he's had against Tampa.
Yeah.
So Cam Jordan comes to play against the Atlanta Falcons.
Right.
So this offensive line, you got to know when the pass play is called and the ball is going to be going through the air, you got to find him because he's trying to get after the quarterback because that's what he does. He rises up to the challenge in this rivalry matchup, and I've already heard him making quotes this week talking about how much he hates the Atlanta Falcons. He will be ready to go.
Yeah, I also see him on my TV all the time with that Downy commercial with his mother, like talking about how he smells like some kind of bread water or something. I don't know. He's on every commercial. I'm like, get out of here, dude. It's too much. It's too much. It's too close to home. Let's kind of transition over to the Saints offense. So obviously, Kellen Moore, their head coach in their first year. In his first year with the Saints, he came from the Philadelphia Eagles after winning a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts. And then in his first draft as a head coach, takes Tyler Shuck, second round out of Louisville, obviously making his third start today after Spencer Rattler was benched earlier in the season. What do we know about Tyler Shuck and what should we be expecting from him on Sunday?
Yeah, I think it's a great point that you make is that he may not be the biggest household name when it comes to the maybe average football fan, but he was a second-round pick. He was the third quarterback that came off the board in the draft, ahead of Dylan Gabriel, ahead of Shedeur Sanders, ahead of Jalen Milroe, right? And so obviously this organization saw something in him. But yes, his last year, 2024 with Louisville, had 23 touchdowns and had 6 interceptions. So he showed last year that he can be a difference maker through the air and minimize the mistakes. Now, yes, it's been a little bit of struggle for him so far this year. Does have a couple of interceptions, but he is a talented player that just lacks experience. So what do you have to do? You got to make things difficult for him to process, right? Things that he has not seen yet as a National Football League quarterback. That's the challenge for Jeff Ulbrich is how can we confuse his eyes? How can we force him to hold on to the football for maybe a half a count longer? Or maybe try to slide the football into a zone or a player or an alley that's not quite there. Or somebody like Jesse Bates in the secondary using all of his experience to trip him up, right? This is what you're trying to do with a younger quarterback that's maybe forced into action a little bit earlier than the organization was anticipating, but they're in a similar spot. Like they're trying to find production. So here he is, the rookie making his third career start.
Yeah, as you said, third career start, hit the bye week last week, but before that they played Carolina and they beat Carolina in his second start as an NFL rookie. It's really quite impressive. And what you were kind of talking about is forcing a rookie to make mistakes. It reminds me of Bryce Young's, I think, very first NFL start. It was in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Jesse Bates picked him off twice in that game. I think he has memory of that because it was insane how Jesse Bates and the rest of this defense was able to manipulate Bryce Young into making mistakes that he didn't even know would be mistakes for him. And obviously with Cousins starting for the Falcons, he's 11 years older than Tyler Shuck. He has so much more experience, but how can this defense on the Falcons side manipulate Tyler Shuck? You already kind of touched on it, but manipulate him to make mistakes that he doesn't even know can be there.
Yeah, the first and foremost is going to be, in order to do all that we just talked about, is you have to stop the run. Like if they are able to run the football against Atlanta, then they can take some of that decision out of his hands, right? They can just decide to hand the ball off a little bit more, whether it's Alvin Kamara, whether it's Taysom Hill getting into the action. But they're going to find a way to see if they can run the football to keep this a game where Shuck only has to throw it maybe 23 or 27 times. In my opinion, that's going to be kind of the target for him. If it gets to the point to where he's throwing it 30, 35, and 40, they've probably got an issue. But that can be done by Atlanta first stopping the run and making this game more one-dimensional, right? Get on them early, stop the run, and then make him have to throw the football. And then this Atlanta Falcons defense that's been much better as far as getting after the quarterback, that's when you got to win up front. You got to have Jalen Walker win up front. You got to have Brandon Dorlus win up front, and you got to be able to get after him.
Yeah, what's interesting is in Week 9, that Tuesday after Week 9 was the trade deadline, and for the New Orleans Saints, they traded away Rashid Shaheed, which I think everyone was kind of thinking, why would you do that? He's one of your, if not the premier pass catcher. I know Chris Olave is there, and he's been nothing but great for that organization, but also Rashid Shaheed is an excellent wide receiver too. He was traded to the Seattle Seahawks and is obviously doing great things over there with a winning team in the NFC. But I mean, let's kind of talk about the pass catchers and who these offensive weapons are. I know you talked about the rushing game a little bit and the rushing attack in Alvin Kamara. The rushing has gone up for Alvin Kamara since Tyler Shuck has started and since Shaheed has been gone. I think it's more about Shaheed not being there than it is about Shuck playing. But who are some guys, I mean, obviously Chris Olave, I mentioned him earlier, that we should be starring. I think most of the people that are watching this probably know the main characters for this Saints offense, but kind of walk us through that one a little bit here.
Yeah, you talked about Chris Olave. Oddly enough, you mentioned pass catchers. Brandon Cooks also, they had a mutual parting of ways this week. And so Brandon Cooks no longer there either. And so the interesting thing is you're going to have Chris Olave, who's extremely talented, and then you're probably going to have Juwan Johnson, the tight end, will be the next option that's going to kind of slide up a little bit and get some more action in the passing game. And then I think very similar to Atlanta is Alvin Kamara is going to be that person as well coming out of the backfield. He's been dual threat his entire career. Been there 9 years, all of them with New Orleans. Oddly enough, he's played a lot of football against the Atlanta Falcons, has not had a great dominant performance. I went and looked it up. He's got 4 rush touchdowns and 0 receiving touchdowns in 15 games against the Atlanta Falcons. I was a little bit surprised by that because you figure with all the talent that he has at some point, you'd think he would take over one game. But just don't think that, oh, he's been shut down and it can't happen, because it can. Like, he's that talented. But to me, offensively, those are the 3 guys, but then I mentioned him earlier. Taysom Hill, to me, is the wild card. He's the guy that does everything for him. He might throw a pass, he might catch a pass, and he might run. All in the same game this weekend. And the guy is extremely physical, even though he is a former quarterback. He's built like a tight end. He can run the football like a running back, and he just does whatever the Saints need him to do to win football games. So just don't ever forget about Taysom Hill, because if it's short yardage or if it's a big play in the game, they like to get the ball in his hands because he just makes things happen.
Yeah, and if it is short yardage, sometimes they like to put him under center, and they're like, you're the quarterback. He's one of like the only real Swiss Army knives I think that the league still has right now that's really impressive and can kind of do everything that he's asked to do at a very high level. Kind of talking about this defense, and I know that we were talking about Shuck and how to get him off balance a little bit, how to manipulate him. One of the ways I think the easiest, most, easy answer to get him shaken up is to pass rush and to get to the quarterback, get him on the ground. And obviously this Falcons pass rush has been doing great things this year since Jeff Ulbrich has taken over as a defensive coordinator. Right now they have more sacks than they had at all, like throughout all 17 games, 18 weeks last year. More sacks. Obviously it was a huge point of emphasis for them going into the draft last year, obviously getting Jalen Walker, James Pierce Jr., and then signing Leonard Floyd. I think everyone kind of forgets that too. They signed Leonard Floyd in free agency. What have you seen from the pass rush in terms of becoming who they are so far this season?
Yeah, interesting that you bring up Leonard Floyd. He's been banged up, and we haven't seen him in the past few weeks, but we haven't really seen a dip in the pass rush because it's been so many different faces, right? Early in the season, it was Zach Harrison and Brandon Dorlus, and Dorlus has been consistent throughout the entire season. Both of those guys tied for the team lead at 4.5 sacks so far this year. Jalen Walker, one of the rookies, has come on as of late. He's got 4 sacks. Then you got Caden Ellis. He's got 3.5 sacks, and then you step down, and then that's when you get into the James Pierce Jr.'s of the world and the rest of the defense, because a lot of guys are sitting in that like 1 to 2 range. Like they've been able to get after the quarterback. Billy Bowman had a big sack last week against Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers, right? So it's going to have to be by committee, but we've seen that there's been a consistent theme, right? Like Dorlus continues to find a way to be a headache up front, right? When Zach Harrison is healthy, he's found his ways to the quarterback. A little bit of James Pierce Jr. coming up as of late, and I love the development that we're continuing to see out of Jalen Walker and what he's bringing. I feel like we're seeing him on the field more and more because of what he's doing and what he's bringing to this defense. So yes, they've got the reinforcements there. Even with Leonard Floyd being banged up, the pass rush has not fallen off.
Yeah, I actually got the opportunity to sit down with both James and Jalen earlier last week, and I asked them, what is it like to be on the line and be on the edge and look over and there's 11, or look over and there's 27? And they were like, I mean, we're not competing to see who can get the first sack. We just know if I'm on this side and Jalen's on this side, or I'm on this side and James is on that side, you're not really doing much. You're not going to get around. You're not going to get out of the pocket very easily with the two of us coming off the edge. And I think that's what Ulbrich and that's what Raheem Morris wanted to see out of this defense. And obviously, like you mentioned, Jalen Walker, I think you've been seeing 11 on the field a lot more recently, not just off coming off the edge, but off the ball as well. And that's because of Divine Diablo being put on IR. He has been designated to return to practice this week. He's been a light participant so far this week in practice, and he will get a game designation on Saturday, whether he will play or not. I think you can see in these stats right here how critical and how important he was to this defense and the defense's health. Just overall, I think Caden Ellis as well, I think bringing in Divine allowed Caden Ellis to do a lot more things and to focus on, rushing the passer and blitzing the ball a little bit more. When you take Divine out of the picture, I mean, look at these stats, Rack. What have you seen from the defense without the stats even? But when you watch the game, what have you seen from this defense without Divine?
Well, first of all, I wanted to make this point because the first couple of weeks without Divine Diablo, I think everybody said to themselves, wow, he is a difference maker because of how much he can do. But that's actually the first time that I saw, before the show, by the way, I saw the stats with and without him. And you want to talk about a difference maker, because that to me really paints a picture and maybe part of the reason why this defense has struggled a little bit, not but rushing the passer. They've still been able to get after the passer. It's the other stuff, right? When you think about total defense, you think about what Jonathan Taylor was able to do, right, in Berlin. And look at the passing yards and the rushing yards, how those have exponentially gone up with him being out of the lineup, right? And now you're seeing the true impact of how much of a difference maker he is when he's patrolling the inside of the defense, because you have a linebacker that's physical enough to play inside the box, but athletic enough to be able to run with people if he gets caught in pass coverage, and they don't really have somebody else that can step up and fill that role. J.D. Bertrand, no offense to him, but he's more of an inside-the-box, run-stuffing type linebacker. Yes, he can run, but he doesn't have the same type of athleticism as Diablo does. And Caden Ellis does, but I think they want to get him involved with rushing the passer because he does that so well. But if they can get him back this week, you get that Swiss Army knife on the defensive side of the ball. Right. Hopefully he's healthy enough. Hopefully he's given the green light. If not, maybe it's one more week. But I think this defense desperately needs to get him back.
Yeah, so when it comes to IR and players are placed on that 4-week IR, they have to be on the IR, the injured reserve list, for 4 weeks. When they come up and they are designated to return to practice, they are in a 21-day window where they can practice with the team all week long, but they do not have to return to the 53-man roster for further development to see if they are ready to go and if they are fully healthy. So we will see if Divine makes a start on Sunday. It will be really interesting, but I do think while Divine has been gone, like you mentioned, those first couple of weeks were like, oh, what's happening? Are the Falcons defense, are they going to be okay with Divine? Is this by committee approach really going to work? But I think actually Ronnie Harrison has done a really great job of filling in and not being a one-for-one for Divine. I think, like you said, he's a Swiss Army knife. It's hard to kind of copy what Divine can do for this defense. But I think Ronnie Harrison has actually kind of come into his own and played his own game and actually been popping off the page, for me at least, a little bit these last couple of weeks.
He's definitely made some plays, and he's got the athleticism also to run sideline to sideline. And I think he's even got more comfortable in his own game, knowing that he's gotten extended reps. Like sometimes it's not necessarily that they're looking over the shoulder, but like Divine Diablo wasn't available, right? So he knew that the numbers just weren't there, and he was one of those guys that was the best fit, him and Bertrand, to kind of fill that void. And I think the more reps he got, the faster he played, the more confident that he played, and the more we saw him show up, to your point, Taylor. So you have to have that some, and if Diablo's not ready to go this week, then maybe it's still the Ronnie Harrison show. But he's just a difference maker in what he can do for this defense. So hopefully we'll see him back.
Yeah, we'll see what happens on Sunday. Again, that game time is 4:30 6:30. Let's go ahead and get to the keys to the game presented by Wells Fargo. You've got 3 from me. I've got my preference. Go ahead with the
I've
first.
got 3, and these are going to be a little bit more big picture, not necessarily one player or matchup, but the first one is start fast. This to me is a game where you've got Kirk Cousins back at quarterback. You've got no Drake London. You want to know the best way to get confidence when you're playing on the road in a rivalry matchup is to march right down the field and put points on the board. Or if you start on defense, get them off the field on 3rd down and show them from the very first drive that they're going to be in for 60 minutes of competition because the way they're stopping the run, or because the way they're getting after the passer, or because they have a near interception on the very first drive of the game. But there's so many things, in my opinion, that you can get working in your favor if you get off to a fast start and put points on the board. Look at the first half last week against Carolina. Atlanta was marching up and down the field like they could do no wrong. Now, second half was a little bit different, but they set themselves up in position with their performance early in the game because they got off to such a fast start. And that's not always offense. Yes, that is a big part of it because it's scoring points. But the defense getting stops and special teams maybe making a big play early on in the game to change field position. I think this is a best game scenario for them to get off to a fast start and get everybody confident and ready to go play.
I think what's been a really interesting choice to kind of watch at the very beginning before the game even starts is the coin toss. And if the Falcons win, they normally elect to receive the ball and start with the ball. And Raheem Morris was actually asked about it in a post-game press conference of why is this a new trend for you guys? And he said, we just like to get points on the board first. We don't want to work from behind to start this game. And it actually was working for the first couple of games that they were doing that. They were getting points on the board early. It's just a matter of now with Kirk Cousins as the new quarterback, the new starting quarterback, will the continuity still be there from 2024 in order to start fast with him and the rest of this offense?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge point. And whether they decide to, if they win the toss, they decide to start on offense, like then that's on Kirk Cousins and everybody to make him show that it was the right decision, right? March all the way down the field and put points on the board.
All right, what's your second key to the game?
Some big momentum plays in this game, right? So I talked a little bit about this with starting fast, but momentum plays, obviously explosive plays, right, on offense, right? If you end up getting that play where Bijan ends up slipping out and he ends up with a 40-yard run, a 60-yard run. We've seen it with an 81-yard run earlier on this season, but it could also be somebody breaking a tackle on a quick slant route, right? Maybe it's Kyle Pitts gets a 6-yard completion and turns it into 60, right? Or it's a defensive play. It's a strip sack. It's a tipped pass that turns into an interception. It's a pick six.
Yeah.
We'll take that. Or how about just that big momentum play on special teams where you get a 40-yard return, you get the offense great starting field position. Maybe you take it back and you get points in the kicking game, but start with some of these momentum plays where it's like, we only need 3 plays and we're scoring a touchdown, right? Like this is another one of those games where get the momentum working on your side and don't give any opportunities for New Orleans to take that momentum.
Yeah, I also think like turnover on downs could be a really huge momentum shifter too. I think what's been an interesting trend in the league so far this year because of the dynamic kickoff and the new punting rules and all the things that are happening on special teams is that more teams are going for it on 4th down, 4th and 2, even 4th and 3. They are going for it way more often. And if you can stop them on downs and you can turn the ball over on downs, huge momentum shifter for the defense and then the offense that is coming back on the field.
No doubt. I agree with you 100% there.
All right, third and final key to the game
today.
All right,
clean, disciplined football game, right? And yeah, you make this argument for every single week, right? But a rivalry week just seems like a little bit more, especially when this game is on the road. So what does this mean? Like false starts, holding penalties, putting you back at 1st and 15, 2nd and 20, like that's gonna hurt, right? Like you can't have these discipline issues, or maybe it's the rivalry ends up getting to somebody and they're pushing after a play and they get called for a 15-yard penalty. You want to be able to play with passion, but you don't want this rivalry game to turn into plays that are negatively affecting, whether it's the offense, whether it's the defense giving them a free 1st down. There's just so many ways where you got to play clean, disciplined football here, right? So you're going on the road, like this needs to be a game where the Falcons have 3 penalties for 26 yards, right? If it ends up being 8 penalties for 85 yards, it's going to be hard because guess what you're doing? You're fighting that crowd all game long because you're sitting back in 1st and 17. It's 3rd and 19. Those are not down and distances where you can win, where you can beat the defense. They got to stay away from those.
Yeah, the last 5 weeks of football for the Falcons, they have drawn 28 penalties for 238 yards. That's about 8.5 yards per penalty. So 10, 15, even a 5-yard penalty too. I think too, when you look at this roster, it's a winning roster on paper. These are major athletes in the NFL. Go out and be a major athlete and don't make those penalties. Be the athlete that we brought you in to be. We drafted you to be, right? This is a winning roster, and I think you can show your professionalism even in a rivalry game.
I was just going to say.
As fun as it is, be professional, get the win, right?
Play with a chip on your shoulder, play with passion, but be a pro.
Be a pro about
Right?
it. Yes, all right, time for my preference, of course. Mine is a little bit more simple today. I know we barely touched on Alvin Kamara, but mine is to stop the run. I think when you look at Tyler Shuck and Rashid Shaheed leaving, I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think Shaheed leaving was more of an indicator for the rush attack to kind of start having an upward trajectory, more so than Tyler Shuck starting. Going into week 10, Alvin Kamara had 11 rushing attempts on average going into week 10, which was about, and he would finish each game with about 41.8 yards per game. Going into week 10, the 1 week since Shaheed has been gone, he had 22 attempts and 83 yards in one game. That shows you how Kamara can be used with Kellen Moore without having Shaheed in as a pass catcher, as an option for this offense. I think it will be really important because I do think that they're going to lean on it a lot, especially because this rush defense has been struggling a little as of late for the Falcons.
Definitely think he's still the focal point of this offense.
Yes.
Like Chris Olave is a dynamic wide receiver, but Olave is not going to get the amount of touches that a Kamara gets.
Right.
Like Kamara, to your point, like he should probably touch the football anywhere between 18 and 25 times in this game because that's the type of player that he is. You want to be able to establish the run with him, and you want to get the ball in his hands in the passing game. So yes, I agree with this 100%. You got to be able to stop the run because if not, they're going to try to do that as much as possible so they don't have to put the ball in the hands of Shuck through the air.
Yeah, all right, I'm going to put Rack on the spot. I love doing this. I have not a random question. I actually thought of this last week during the game. Would you rather, and let us know in the comments what you think, would you rather be juked out by Bijan Robinson or mossed by Drake London?
Oh gosh, okay. I would rather be mossed by Drake London.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because if I elevate and I'm right there and he just goes a little bit higher and he just takes it off the top of my head, that's not that big of a deal. But Bijan Robinson in open field and he breaks your ankles and you fall down to the ground and everybody in the crowd is going, ooh.
But look how, he's such a chatterer, Drake London. If you get mossed by Drake, he's going to talk your ear off. He's going to make you hurt, right? Where Bijan, if he jukes you out, he's like, hey man, good try. That was great. I'll pray for you. That was great.
Such a great
Do you know what I mean?
Or he's not going to say anything at all. He's going to give the ball back to the official and just go back to the huddle.
Yes. And I think if you come off to the sidelines, the whole team would be like, hey man, it happens to everyone. It's really not a big deal. With Drake, they're like, how could you let that happen? You look silly.
I like your explanation, but I'm sticking with my answer. I'd rather be mossed by Drake because I ain't trying to get my ankles broken, fall down on the turf, and everybody just staring at me like, did you see that dude just get shook out of his cleats?
All right, well, let us know down in the comments, would you rather have Bijan Robinson juke you out or be mossed by Drake London? I think it's a pretty good question because I don't think either are preferred for anyone. But thank you guys for joining us for the Falcons pregame show presented by Ticketmaster. The game is on Sunday at 4:30 down in New Orleans. We'll see if the Falcons can get back in the win column this week. See you guys.